Hello, I'm Liz Van Vliet, and welcome to the Assist with Impact podcast. Join me as I explore the competencies and capabilities that allow you to assist with impact. I'll be sharing practical tips, strategies, and insights that will help you move beyond what I call the order taker zone and be that little hinge that can swing big doors. If you're ready to be more proactive and have more impact in your role, then this is the place for you. Let's get started with the episode. Well, hello, lovely listener. I'm back, and this is episode 159, and I'm literally back and figuratively back because I'm back in Sydney after my European adventures or shenanigans, as the case may be, and I'm back at my desk recording podcast episodes just for you. So, hello and welcome. And I also want to say hello to a lot of new listeners that I have been hearing from who have recently discovered my podcast, and it's great to have you here. So if you are new to the Assist with Impact podcast, previously being indispensable, it's great to have you here. Thanks for listening. Right, this week, with no further ado, this week's episode is all about that word that gets thrown around a lot, credibility. I'm a big fan of the word credibility, and I'll tell you that it is something that I take very seriously in terms of being a word that describes how I want to show up in the world. And it is a word that is talked about not just by me, but by a lot of other people in the EA training and coaching space, or just generally out in the world, as a really important thing for us to build and maintain. Whether you are an individual contributor, as you are as an assistant, whether you are somebody that is an aspiring groundbreaker, somebody who has a side hustle and, is out there putting themselves out into the world in some other way, or if you are a tried and true leader, the quality that amplifies your success is credibility. Your path to success in life and in your career is smoother when you are seen as credible. But what is credibility? What does the word actually mean? So let me just run through just paint a picture of what I mean when I'm talking about credibility. When you are credible, others have confidence in you because they see you as believable, as competent, and as trustworthy. So for me, credibility is the building block for trust. And as we go through our lives, we want people around us that we can trust. And we do business with people we trust. We hire people we trust. We follow leaders that we trust. And if we are being supported by an assistant, we want that person. We want to be able to trust that person, and that person needs to have credibility as the starting point. So, what can you do to build your credibility? So, this is something I'm a big fan. If you've been listening to the podcast for any time at all, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey. And he had this idea that he communicated on the 4 core principles of credibility. They are integrity, intent, capability, and results. So let's talk about them individually. So let's start with integrity. It's more than honesty. So again, I have this thing that I call the value star exercise. And it's something that I developed when I was wanting to really get in touch with the value that I brought to the table when I was coming back from breast cancer and re-entering the workforce. And integrity is one of my 5 values in terms of the value that I bring to the table. Integrity is more than honesty. It's a foundational core. People who work with integrity consistently do the right thing in just ethical, moral ways. Their behaviours consistently align with their values. They treat others with decency and fairness. And time again, when you behave with integrity, you are building your credibility. So it's a real hot button for me in terms of, for me, when I'm thinking about staying in my integrity, I really struggle to engage in the business world with people who I don't see doing the same thing. And I wonder if you can relate to that in your experience, because, on the flip side of staying in integrity is when we're dealing with people who are not staying in integrity, and violations of integrity are the biggest destroyers of credibility. So, we can talk about people in recent years who, high profile people who have been seen to fall off their perch. Somebody like, say, Martha Stewart, for example. But you don't have to be famous to suffer from the reputational damage that comes when you do not remain in integrity. So it's a delicate balancing act, and what comes into play there is your intent. So we're up to the second principle of credibility of the 4 that Stephen Covey talks about. So we've talked about staying in integrity and that it's more than honesty. Intent is a delicate balancing act because people generally are smart. So we can't be surprised when people question or scrutinise the intent behind your action or actions. So what Stephen Covey talks about is that respect is gained when your intent includes bettering the people around you. Individuals whose intent is viewed as mutually beneficial will garner credibility and support. That's something that Stephen Covey says. Now, how does that apply to you in terms of showing up as somebody that is credible? Well, it comes down to that thing that I've talked about in other episodes, and I always talk about in my training, which is seeing other people as human beings, not human doings. Not just seeing yourself that way, but also seeing other people that way, including the people that we're supporting as assistants, and just not losing sight of the humanity and wanting, and when we're talking about this idea of intent, is really trying to go through life and go out there with the mindset that it's not just all about me, and it's not just about me getting ahead. It's about everybody winning. So creating those win-win environments is what he's talking about there. Now, let's move on to the third one, capable. Are you capable? So being capable is the measurement of your ability to do your work well. So do you have the talent, the attitude, the knowledge, and the style, the presence to deliver competently on the tasks that are assigned to you? To gain credibility, you must also be competent. So, in my mind, competence is something that is enhanced by doing exactly what you're doing now, listening to podcasts like mine, being a self-directed learner, being somebody that is curious and has focused on that knowing yourself pillar that I talk about in my training, who's staying up to date on knowledge, skills, and trends in your sphere. And in our case, we're talking about, being across the best practices and thought leadership around delivering in the role of an assistant and elevating your impact by investing in your own skills development. So, if you're not learning and keeping yourself up to date, you are only doing yourself a disservice and you're not going to be building your credibility. Okay, let's go on to the final one of Stephen Covey's 4 principles. And the final one, number 4, is results. And again, this is a hard truth that if we're not actually achieving results for the person or people that we're supporting, the organisation that we're working for, then we're not going to be able to be seen as credible, because the cold hard fact in the business world is that you are judged on your results, not on effort. So your results build credibility and trust, and you're evaluated on your accomplishments and your track record of delivery. So if this is something that you feel you need to work on, then first tip for you would be thinking about what I talked about in other episodes about linking, being able to connect the dots between your outputs and the outcomes and impact that your manager and your team and the broader organisation is seeking to achieve. So, first thing is getting clear on the outputs that you are, the results you are generating. Visualize those. Really, if you want to step that up, then that's where doing things like visualizing your success and really, using that as a way to self-motivate, to motivate yourself. Doing things where you're challenging that negative self-talk that goes on, that I'm, the just an assistant type of negative self-talk, that you do matter and your contribution matters. And then seek out constructive, tough feedback from your manager. Apparently, 46% of men say they receive difficult feedback, while only 36% of women say they do. So consciously and intentionally asking for feedback, not just platitudes, but actual constructive, tough feedback. What could I be doing better? So remember, we want to use those what questions to paint a picture for ourselves. So that, in a nutshell, is what Stephen Covey is talking about when he's talking about credibility. So if you follow me on Instagram, you will know that I'm a big fan of Dr. Peter Fuda. He's an Australian leadership expert, thought leader, and he has this idea around this area that we're talking about today in terms of building your credibility. He actually has this equation that his trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intent. So you can see there that it's basically just a bit of a reframing of what we've just gone through with Stephen Covey's 4 principles. But he believes that we can all be vastly more influential based on the premise that influence is not a function of one or two big things. Rather, the outcome of aligning a range of small tactics, tools, strategies, beliefs, and mindsets that he calls 2%ers. So he strongly believes that success is not a matter of intention, it's a matter of alignment. And I'm going to share in the show notes, in the description for this episode, an article where this idea of these 2%ers is explored, because I think it's a really interesting thing to read about these 2%ers, these small tweaks that we can make that when combined are going to contribute to our credibility and trust that people have in us. So I'm going to finish off with that simple message that in conclusion, in this article, just the conclusion of this article, it says that the 5 2%ers that they talk about here are just a fraction of the hundreds that Dr. Fuda has identified to help the leaders he works with to be more influential. And I want you to benefit from reading about these too. So I'm going to share this article, and you can go, as a follow-up to this episode, have a read of this post that was on LinkedIn about this idea of 2%ers. So go big or go home. Focus on building your credibility by really being intentional in those 4 areas that Stephen Covey talks about, and thinking about those little 2%ers that you can incorporate in the way you're showing up to elevate your impact. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see the show notes, head over to my website. It would be great if you haven't already done so. If you enjoyed the show, if you could kindly go to iTunes and leave a review. It helps other people find the show. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.